Welcome to Slasher Sunday, Bates Motel, Season 4, one season to go. How you feeling about that?
Very sad. Very sad.
So, spoilers, obviously, but when we talk about these kinds of things, I always want to, start with that.
Yeah.
So, Norma Bates has finally passed on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you had called. Did you say season 3 or 4 that she'd die? I thought you said.
I don't remember. I think I might have said 3.
I think so
or
too.
4. I think I said it like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So it makes sense that it would be the end of the second to last season.
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah.
Sure. I mean, you can only go on so long after Norma's death.
Right.
In this show.
Yeah.
I feel like with the Psycho movies, because they are different tonally than this show, and they are more slasher oriented, when it comes to, especially like 3 is like a straight up slasher. You can have Norman just being the nut who's killing people in the hotel and all that, or motel. But with this show, just the way the drama and the way the show is, I don't see stretching this show out much past Norma's demise.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would eventually kind of run its course without Norma.
This will be the first time that we get to make some predictions for the next season that I'll be included on, because I haven't seen the last few episodes of the show. So I can only speculate certain things. So that'd be tough, because I do know certain things that happen, because I did watch the first 5 or 6 episodes. So I have 4 or 5 episodes I didn't see. But I'm very, very excited to finally finish this show once and for all. I had to go all the way back through to do it, but that's okay. All right, so let's start. I guess we'll talk about Norman being committed.
Yeah.
Because Norman spends a good majority of the season in a mental institution where he should be.
Absolutely. That is where he belongs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he is a little shit at the mental facility. He's just so cocky and arrogant, and so I'm better than everything that's going on here, even though it's like we talked about in the last season. It's like a resort place. It's so nice.
Yeah.
Compared to
the
County,
place. Yeah, the place he ended up before.
Yes, it's much nicer, and his doctor seems genuinely, like he wants to help him and cares about him. But Norman is messed up, and we definitely get a lot of his just how messed up he is this season. I feel like, obviously with how it ends, but even before that.
Yeah, I mean, Norman's decline keeps declining more and more per episode, but especially per season.
Yes.
And there's just a progression of his insanity, and this season is definitely the craziest that he gets, which makes sense, right?
Yeah.
He should have a decline that continues to decline. And we see very little happy, normal Norman in this. And I feel like almost all of the normal Norman we get in this is an act.
Oh, I agree. I don't feel like we get any of his normal self at all. I think there might be a tiny bit when he's with Norma, at the end, because I think he's happy then and really thinks he's doing the right thing. But the rest of the season, it's all totally an act to get what he wants. He's just become very good at manipulating people the same way that Norma is good at manipulating people. Like, he uses his charm to get what he wants.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, he is there, and so what do you think would happen if they didn't check him out and he just had to stay there until he was actually better, supposedly, in the doctor's eyes? Like, do you think that Norman would have made a recovery, or do you think that he's just too far gone at this point?
I don't know. I mean, if he was forced to stay there and, like, separated from his mom, I think it's possible he could have gotten better. I think that if he did have a recovery, he wouldn't really want to live with Norma or be around Norma anymore. Because, like, his recovery would mean that he would have to acknowledge how bad they are for each other, specifically how bad she is for him.
Yeah.
So I feel like, he would need to move away. I think it's possible if he was forced to stay there that there might have been more of a recovery. Because there is, like, one episode where I do feel like he's starting to make a little bit of progress. And then it all kind of gets destroyed when he sees Norma was married. Yeah. So if he hadn't seen that, I think he would have kind of progressed on, like, that journey of self-healing.
Yeah.
But because he sees that, Norma didn't tell him that she was married, rather.
Yeah.
It just totally sends him spiraling.
Sure, because ultimately Norma is, like, his, right?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, in the last season, he comes to her and outright says, like, what made me mad is, like, I wondered if it was true that I'm attracted to you. Mm-hmm. And he's playing with her ass while she's sleeping and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, he's just jealous. I mean, the episode in which he finds out, I don't know if it's when he finds out. No, I think that's when he comes home. But there's an episode in this that's titled Unfaithful.
Yeah.
And it's basically like Norma's having an affair.
Yeah.
Right? With another man. And he ain't having it. And you're right. I think that he might have been on some road to success. Whether or not that would have completely came to fruition or not, we'll never know, obviously. But I do think it's plausible that Norman gets better. But I think it would take a long time, and I don't think he has the patience to be away from his mom. But at the same time, it's being away from his mom is exactly what he needs.
Yeah.
But I think we can all agree that, as much as Norma wants to do what she thinks is right and she's giving in to your kid, this is a constant, kind of battle I have with the mother of my kids. No disrespect to her, and I'm not trying to say anything about her in this way. Just stating co-parenting in general. There's times to be firm with your kids, and there's times to be sympathetic. And when Norman is calling her and he's talking to her and he's crying and like, why won't you let me come home and all that stuff, Norma's going to give into it because she's an enabler. And Norman is the way that he is, partially because of that. Not completely, but it is like, there's so many moments within this season where Kaylee and I looked over at each other, and even though you know the outcome, even though you know things that are going to happen, and like this and that, and I think this was great about this show, and you're so invested, is that like you even though like Norma's going to die, that Norman's going to not get better, and all this, there's this side of yourself that you've tricked into believing because you care about these people, and they are such tragic characters. Every single one of them to me is tragic. You sit back and you believe for, like, some fool part of you is like, maybe she'll do the right thing. And you know, and we kept looking over at each other throughout this season and just being like, why'd you have to do that? And it's like, well, because they had to get Norman to be fucking crazy and eventually kill her. But yeah, it's just there's so many moments, and in particular, I think the big moment, of course, is when he's crying and like, can I come home? And she's like, of course you can. Yeah. And so that's like there's two huge moments in this that seal Norma's fate and make it impossible for Norman to ever get better. And it's her letting him come home, agreeing to it. Mm-hmm. And secondly, when she's at the table with him when he's home and he's already in this completely irrational state and he's broken, and she's just like, you know, we're together now and you just got to deal with it. Like,
yes.
That's it. That one. I don't. What does she say? Like, can you give more of a better paraphrase than that?
Like, we're together. Like, I love him, and we're together, and you're just gonna have to learn to live with it, something like that.
That's it.
And
that's it for her. But you know, now in that moment, I felt that was her fate sealed, because it was gonna be out of a place of jealousy. And he was going to, you know, because in Psycho 4, we learn, actually, I think we even learn in Psycho 1, I think they say that he poisoned her, right? I think that's what happens, poisoned her and her lover. Yeah, they do say that. So we know from the movies, should I say, that Norman poisons her lover and her. And we see it play out in Psycho 4. And in this, obviously, they take it in a different direction, and I much prefer this direction, but I do like the other direction as well. But I think it's Norma. I didn't at first at the dinner table when she did that. I was like, oh, that's what it is. It's going to be jealous anger, but then it actually comes down to her depression, and like. He knows that she's never gonna like be happy again because he stole something from her and she's down, and he's either jealous about that or he's sad about that or both or whatever, and he knows that he's never gonna get better.
I think he does it more because he doesn't want to lose her again. Like, now that he got her back, He
wants to die with her.
Yeah, throughout the show, there's definitely been comments like Norma, you know, she likes these new beginnings, which is what he's talking to her about. But she does this a lot, apparently, throughout their life, where she'll just kind of pick up and go and start new and get these, like, hopes and get so excited about something. And, you know, he doesn't really want her to find, like, another person. So I think when he gets her back after her and Romero break up, he's like, all right, this is it. Like, I'm keeping her now.
Yeah, I mean, it could be just that, you know, if I can't have her, no one can.
Yeah.
Like, she's mine. But dying together is poetic, and they're together forever, right? Like, they die in bed together, and they stay together forever. They'll be buried together, kind of thing. So, there's probably a sick kind of romantic gesture of it in a way.
Sure.
But I also had feelings of like he's helping put her and himself out of their misery. He's doing them a favor. But I do like the idea of like, you know, he just wants them to go out together so that they are together. So I don't know, but Norma, you can't play with fire that long and not get burned. I mean, the whole Romero and Norma's marriage is really, really sad for both of them, because Norma is genuinely happy.
Yeah.
And Romero is genuinely happy. And we've seen Norma put on the smiley face and you know, around Norman she's happy, but she's always like 2 seconds away from snapping.
Oh my god, she's always so close to losing it.
But with Romero, when Norman isn't around,
yeah,
she's not.
when Norman's not around and they're not talking about Norman and she's not having to deal with it, yeah. She definitely felt more like calm and together with Romero.
So, I mean, obviously Norman wouldn't exist, so this wouldn't really have much of a question on his side of things, but if Norman wasn't born, would Norma have been able to live a happier life? Like,
maybe.
Does Norman bring her misery or some form of happiness? Like, would she have been more miserable? Because Norma, before Norman,
yeah,
all she had was a reminder of what she lost and what was taken from her. Mm-hmm. Right? She was raped and she lost her brother, who was her only family. And so Dylan was like this, probably making her hate herself and hate the world and everything. And then Norman comes around, and even though he's a product of a bastard piece of shit husband, she has her like perfect little angel that was made out of love, right? Even though she did love Caleb, so I don't know, but I don't know. As we had stated, we don't know if Caleb came from the rape or the consensual sex before the rape. So I don't know if we'll ever get that answer.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't even know if she'd ever know, because who knows when the last time they had sex before she was like, we're done.
Right.
Could have been the day before. Could have been that day, for all we fucking know. So there's no real way to gauge that. But, like, Norman and Norma are just terrible for each other.
Yeah, absolutely they are. Yeah, I mean, they feed into each other's, like, issues. And Norma is a huge enabler, which is also something that we've been saying to each other, like, throughout the show. Every time Norman has some amount of progress, like, Norma just enables his bad behavior and his psychosis, and, like, it really is super sad. Like, I do feel very bad for Norman.
Yeah.
Like, because I think at this point, I mean, like, yes, he's an adult, but he's so, like, conditioned by her, you know, to act the way that he does and to accept, like, his flaws and blackouts and all these things that he, like, has. He's a product of her parenting. And especially with the end of this, like, I felt really bad for him when she dies, because, like, it's almost like he doesn't even realize what he was doing, which is super bizarre, because I don't think that was Norma in control. No. It was definitely Norman that was turning on or closing all the vents and everything. But, like, you know, when he wakes up, it's like he's very disoriented, which obviously he could just be disoriented from, you know, almost dying. But then even, you know, as time goes on, where he's having to, like, meet with, like, the funeral director, and, you know, he's convinced himself that there is some plan that Norma's not telling him, and it's really sad, because it's like she was everything to him. And, like, I do genuinely believe that. Like, I do believe that both of them, like, the other meant the world. You know, like, Norma did do anything for Norman, even though she was sort of trying to have her own life. Like, she literally marries Romero to get the insurance. And, you know, she's helped him cover up murders and everything. And Norman will do anything for his mom. So, like, it's really sad to think that, like, he literally can't cope with the fact that she's dead at all. Which obviously is the case, you know, in the original movie as well. But seeing it this way was like, you know, because in the original, we don't see how he is when she dies. We just see, like, years later, like, what he's acting like. But, like, seeing the immediate reaction to her death, I felt really bad for him, honestly. And, yeah.
Well, two things on that. Number one, we see a great contrast in this season when it comes to the two women in his life, right? Mm. And how easily he gives up one, and how much he will not give up the other. Yeah. Right? So you see in this who his real infatuation
Yeah.
is, right? You see who his real girlfriend is
Yeah.
in his mind, right? Dylan starts dating Emma, and he just genuinely like, I'm happy for you. Sees them out there, they're playing croquet together. He's like, I'm happy for you. Emma comes over. He's smiling and sweet with her. And as I said, it's one of the only times where he's genuinely Norman. And it's like, giving up Emma is nothing to him. And he's like, oh yeah, you guys make way more sense. She's, you know, she's awesome and he's not mentally insane. And yeah, good luck. Yeah. But when Romero comes around for Mom and it's not even his girlfriend, he sure as shit takes it like it's his girlfriend. So
yes.
That's I think that's a good contrast to have here. You know, and secondly, what was I gonna say? I was listening and I was like, I got this, and I was like, you're not gonna forget.
No,
maybe it'll come back. Maybe it'll come back. But so anyway, we've got. We'll talk more about Norma's death and her like getting dug up and you know, Norman not being able to accept the plan. Or not accept her death and thinks there's some plan. I think that's great and
yes.
very much Norman, and yeah, all that stuff is great. As far as like the Emma's storyline goes in this, how did you feel about that?
I mean, I was really happy with it. It was like such a sweet little like sunshine part of the show, you know. I mean, aside from the fact that Dylan's like realizing that Norman killed Emma's mom, you know, like that stuff really sucks. And everything with Dylan and the family this season was really heartbreaking. Obviously the conversation he has with Norma when he's telling her that she needs to check him in and that he's got to check Norman in and that he's got problems and everything. And she's just like, you're jealous and so dismissive of him, and just kind of goes back to like, you know, there's a period for like a season or so where she kind of was acting like she loved Dylan again. You know, she was being nice to him, and it's because she helped him with Norman. Yeah. Helped her with Norman and everything, and then she just kind of reverts back like the second that Norman is in danger, because Dylan's, you know, he's not even really threatening. He's just like, I know these earrings like aren't yours. Like, why are you lying to cover up? Like, you're suspicious. Like, I know what's going on. Yeah. He literally knows, and she's just denying and lying to him. You know, she just turns back into this awful mom that we saw in season 1 with him, where she's like, I hate you. Yeah. And she doesn't say that to him, but she's just really horrible. And I'm proud of Dylan, obviously, for being like, I'm not going to do this anymore. Because, like, in real life, when you have, like, a toxic relationship like that, whether it's with a parent or a friend or, you know, a significant other, like, you do have to reach a point where you're like, I'm not going to, like, take your lies. Like, it's not okay to, you know, let yourself be lied to so much. I felt really bad for him, but happy that he got away. And everything with him and Emma is just really cute and sweet. Like, they're really adorable together, and I hope that they stay happy, but I'm definitely concerned because, you know, Dylan calls Norman at the end of this, and Norman does not tell him that Norma is dead, because she's not to him, which is really going to cause some problems. And yeah, well, it sucks.
He not only tells him that she's not dead, but he also is like, I don't think we should speak anymore.
Right, which I was going to say, because, you know, in the same time when Norma is telling him, or like when Norma and him had that fight, and he comes down the stairs after leaving, and he runs up to Norman and just like hugs him. Like, he's a really good brother, and he does care about Norman a lot. But again, it's like, he's tried so much to help. Like, he really has. And there's a point where he's just like with anybody, like, you can't help the people that don't want to help themselves. You know, there's only so much that he can do, especially because if it was just Norman, I think he would be fine. Like, you'd put him in there, you'd make him get his help and everything. But because Norma is there, it's, like, impossible to help Norman. Yeah. And so that's really sad that Norman now is telling him, like, I don't think we should speak anymore. And Dylan just is like, oh, okay, cool. So I just, like, don't have a family anymore. But, like, honestly, it's better for him to not be involved in that family. So.
Yeah. And, you know, this arrogance and, you know, stubbornness that Norma has, she pays the ultimate price. I mean,
yeah, she does.
Her husband and her child are both very, you know, adamant on trying to convey to her, like, your son isn't well.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a good scene between Romero and Dylan where he's like, have you seen him be violent? And you think for a second Dylan's going to lie or something.
Yeah.
But Dylan is just like, no. And I love that scene where when Dylan goes home and he tells Norma, like, you know, the earring stuff and, like, he needs help and you need to take him. It's you know, and then he runs down, you know, as you said, the hug, and tells Norman, like, Norman, you're sick.
Yeah.
Right, like really trying to get him to see it. But he also knows, like, as you said, you can't get through to that. So it is a tragic scene. Is that really like what the scars look like on a lung transplant, with like completely like cut under the tits like this?
I don't know, I guess.
Stapled like that? Is that really?
I've never seen the scars.
Because the lungs are back here.
But they
you would think they would. Because he touches her back and she's like, oh, my scars. But then
I mean, I felt like they would go all the way around. I don't know why.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
I'm glad that she obviously is fine and hasn't rejected them yet.
Yeah.
Who knows what will happen in the next season.
I feel like Emma really kind of got sidelined for 2 seasons in a row now. I feel like she has very little screen time in the last 2 seasons now.
It's kind of, I mean, like...
But I don't know what more she could do.
Yeah, like, she's kind of going off and, like...
She needs to be... What she needs to be doing is she needs to be investigating her mom's disappearance.
Sure. I mean, but she doesn't even really think that her mom is, like... I mean, she thinks her mom's gone as, like, a, like...
Yeah.
You know, she was coming to her for money and everything, and she doesn't really want a relationship with her mom.
Yeah.
But you're right, like, if she was investigating it, that would definitely make her more involved and put her more at risk from, like, Norman and Norma, like, if she found out that something happened. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen next season, because obviously Dylan and them will find out that Norma is dead. And when that will be and how that will go down, I don't know.
Yeah.
But, yeah, she's pretty much just been, like, in the hospital, getting her lung transplant, recovering. Like, it's all been good with her for the most part, you know? Like... Easy
paychecks.
Yeah.
For Olivia Cook.
Yeah.
She just shows up, does a couple lines, and is like, pay up.
The scene with her and Norman was probably one of my favorites this season.
Yeah.
Because, like, as you said, that was him, like, actually happy and, like, aware. Like, that's the sweet Norman that we meet in the first season, you know, before he starts to go downhill. And it was just really nice. It was nice to see her, like, because she was worried about, like, hurting him and everything, and she's just been so wonderful to the whole family. Like, always. She's such a sweet character, and the way Norman responds to her is also just really nice. And, you know, when Dylan comes in, like, it's just good. It's like, this is another moment where it's like you just want all of them to be happy. And then when they get in the car right after that to go Christmas tree shopping, and Norma is just, like, short with him and so pissed off, and he makes a comment when they get out of the car, like, I forgot how moody she can be. And it's like, dude, seriously, like, when people act like that, like, I know that it's hard sometimes. Like, I've done it, of course. Like, everybody's done it, where you're just, like, you're unintentionally short with people because you're upset or irritated or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, that's definitely normal. But with Norma, she is, like, always back and forth with it. Like, you don't know what to expect sometimes with her, because it's, like, on one hand, she'll be, like, one moment, she'll be really sweet and charming, and then the next, she's, like, screaming at you. And which is what happens with Norman, is, like, she starts screaming at him at the Christmas tree lot and makes him throw up from how upset he gets that she's like, I like him.
Right.
And she, like, vomits from that. Yeah. Which is really horrible, because it means that he's, like, the fact that he has a physiological reaction to that,
yeah,
dude, like that's really bad. That's really bad.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we got the return of Chick in here. And he tries to blackmail Norma, fixing this stained glass window door. She breaks down, is like, I can't get him killed and I can't kill you, so I'm screwed. And this really changes Chick's mind. I mean, I know Chick, like, lost his wife and his kid and $50,000 and everything, but I think he has an epiphany or a change of heart in that moment of like, this family is more messed up than I am, right? Like they don't need me screwing them up any more than they already are. So he has this moment with her on the bridge, and she screams at him, and he's a very, very interesting character.
Yes, he is.
I never know what to make of the guy, ever.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he ends up being a good guy in the end, and being like, all right, like, be well, Norma, and gives her a kiss and brings food to her funeral, and like, forgets about the Caleb thing, and lets it go because he knows he screwed up, and he sees how broken Norma is, and he sees how broken he is, and he's just like, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see the effect Norma has on him. But just like with any of the men in this show, like, she just has that, like, she really does. And Norman at her funeral thought he's giving like a speech to nobody. He like calls her like half queen, half like child or something like that, or little girl, or I don't know. He says something like that, and it definitely is a good description of her, because she just like totally fluctuates between being like this really strong, like grown woman that's like in control and in charge, and then she like turns into this little girl who's like very demure and like coy and stuff. And I think Chick, she has that effect on him just like she does with everybody else. So Chick, when he comes in, I was like losing my mind.
You were so uncomfortable
I was
with that.
so uncomfortable at the end. Norman's like got Norma's body on the couch, and Chick like just walks into the house, and like you think like, oh, maybe that he won't see, maybe he won't see, and then he like just looks over and sees her dead eyes just like staring, which are horrifying looking. And his reaction to that is bizarre too, because he's kind of like, do what you need to do, but just remember that she's dead. Like,
she's dead, right?
Like, she's dead, but it's okay that you have her body, but she's dead. And then he's like, I'm gonna come check on you.
So Chick is just a very non-traditional, non-judgmental kind of guy. Where he sees and he accepts Norma. Right, like when he confronts her at the diner and he's like, "You had sex with your brother. Just say it. Why you bullshitting?"
Right.
Like
it's all about being.
He's all about like just hard, upfront, candid conversations. And he's a little more extreme version of me. Like, I get why people deny, but I don't want them to. Like, I want everyone to just be completely open and honest. Like, I hate that people are in denial about things, or that they pretend that they're not one way that they are, or something like that. Shit drives me insane. But with Chick, I feel like he's even a more extreme version of me, where he genuinely doesn't understand why people aren't just telling the truth. And so with him, he's just kind of like, he sees this young kid who's just crushed by the death of his mother, and he looks and he sees the dead body, and to him it's just like, okay, like, you do what you gotta do, but like, you know she's dead, right? Like, that's the only concern he has. Like,
yeah,
you know, everyone grieves in a different way. But, like, thinking she's still alive is too far.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when we were watching this episode too, especially when Norman goes to get her body, and he's just like driving around with her in the car, and like then he opens the door and she just like falls out. Like, it is bizarre, like, you know, when somebody's that recently deceased, where it's like they still look like themselves. Could be alive, like, they could be, I mean, they don't look alive because they don't, you know, they don't look alive, but they're not like decomposing and rotting or anything yet, right? Like, she obviously was killed in a non-violent way too, so she's got no wounds or anything. Yeah. So it is like really weird to just be like, the person isn't there, like the body's still there.
Yeah.
And this is like what I mean about it being so sad with Norman, because it's like dealing with death is really tough. But then for Norman, like when he's already having these hallucinations of Juno, of the dog, and like he's already got like a hard time dealing with death in general, but then dealing with the death of his mom is like this whole nother thing that like he literally, like, his brain will not accept that she's dead.
I mean, do you think that it's that he can't accept that she's dead, or that he can't accept that he killed her?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
I think it's totally both, because it's weird that he's asking her for the plan when it was his plan to do the murder-suicide.
Yeah.
You know? So, but then it's like, oh, it's part of her plan to pretend to be dead. And, you know, when he's like taping her or like gluing her eyelids open after like earlier in that episode, he was telling one of the investigators that she had like these beautiful blue eyes and everything. And she's just got those creepy dead eyes. This is really scary. And also when he's at the funeral home asking to look at her body and she opens her eyes on the table and like winks at him or whatever. That actually genuinely frightened me because I was not expecting it at all.
Yeah.
And it was like a quick glimpse. I mean, we've been seeing his like hallucinations throughout the show, but for some reason that one was really scary to me because like it was so fast. It was such a quick thing. And I guess I was mostly thinking like if I was looking at somebody that I cared about and they were dead and then I just like saw them open their eyes and like wink or something, like it would mess me up. It would really mess me up if my brain was like trying to convince me that they were pretending to be dead.
I don't know if it messed me up. I would just be like, okay, it's time to get up. Joke's over.
No, but oh my gosh, yeah. So, Norman is, I mean, in total denial. He's in total denial, which is really,
as we know,
really like, you know, to contrast it with how Romero handles her death too, which is also super, super tragic. Because the whole fight that they have, like, he cares so much about Norma. And he does care about Norman in his own way, of course. Not as much as he cares about Norma, but, you know, by proxy, because he knows how much she loves him and everything. You know, trying to get him the help is important to him. And he's not, I don't think he's overstepping any kind of line at all when he tries to tell her that she needs to put him back in. But she's obviously upset that he's considering going behind her back and committing him.
Sure, this is just from past relationships where her husband tried to control her.
Yeah.
Right. So that's her own issues.
It is. And, you know, she's obviously like, it's really sad because I don't think she wants to believe him, truthfully. But because of Norman, she can't have a relationship with him. Like, it's almost like she knows, you know, that this is like an impossibility. And when Romero finds her and is like trying to get her to breathe again and everything, and he's just breaking down, it was just like they had a week of happiness. Like literally like a week or two of happiness.
Yeah, he said they were married 2 weeks.
Yeah, but not even, because Norman came back like a couple days.
Sure, plus they didn't really have a real marriage for the first few days, because she was like, this is fake and you could just sleep in their this and that, and they don't have sex until at least 3 or 4 days after they're married. and then in the morning, that's when things are like good.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think they get a week together to be happy before Norman comes home and ruins everything. As far as Romero goes, you've got this side storyline where the chick he used to bang is the bank teller. She's laundered $3 million of Bob Paris's money, and she eventually gets caught by the DEA and tries to wear a wire and get Romero taken in. Yeah. This ultimately backfires. She's going to end up in jail. But Romero does get arrested.
He does.
For lying about ever having a romantic relationship or knowing her outside of the bank. So, what do you think that's going to mean for Romero? You think he's going to go to prison?
I mean, it's possible. He has done a lot of illegal stuff. He's murdered people. So if any of that information, obviously Bob Harris, which is, the big one in this situation, I think he could totally go to prison. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's going to be around Norman like hardly at all this season, is what I'm guessing, especially because Norma is there. I don't know, though. I think it's also possible that Norman's going to be, like, hiding her and stuff when people come over. But it seems weird because, although, I don't know, he could just be like, I have to hide you because people, think that you're dead. So, like, we have to hide that you're alive and here and everything. Yeah. But I just feel like Romero's not going to be around him a whole lot until maybe, like, the end. And that will, like, be the culmination.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing, because I remember some things of season 5, and we do get into the events of Psycho, which is cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that.
But it's definitely been altered. We'll just say that. But my biggest curiosity for next season, since I don't know, is A, who gets out alive. Yeah. B, how much Norma's body decomposes and what it looks like after he's taxidermied her. Yeah. And, do Emma and all of them find out about Emma's mom and all that stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious about all that as well, especially how Norma's going to look after Norman taxidermies her. And just, all this stuff with the Psycho film. Like, I'm really curious what's different and how that'll all play out. And, like Caleb, I'm very curious about him and how he's going to find out about Norma and his reaction. I mean, I know what his reaction will be to an extent, but just, I feel like there's a lot to go over in one season. Like, I could have seen there being another season after this, so I'm really sad that it's the last one.
How do you think Dylan's gonna find out his mom's dead?
I think that maybe he will hear it from, maybe it'll be the same thing as Norman, he'll see it in the newspaper. Although it seems weird that, I don't know, because, she's not a popular figure in town, but she does run a motel in town, so, I could see, it just being in the... But I don't know why he'd be reading the newspaper, too. I don't feel like he does that.
Plus, he's in Seattle.
It's possible that Chick might call him, because Chick has his number and Chick knows. So I could see that being, who reaches out to him to be like, hey, your mom's dead, and Norman's, there alone.
With her body.
With her body. Yeah, so... I'll say that. I'll say Chick will tell him.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's the season. Norman in the nut house. The scene where he talks to Julian and is like, I can convince people that I'm, right, and you're going to be in here for the rest of your life because you can't act normal, but I can. That's a great sequence because this Norman is so wearing it. Oh, I remember.
Oh, good.
The second thing. So in this season, I think that Norman becomes less sympathetic. I think that because a lot of this season, Norman is Norman. And Norman is very, like, well, as we said, he's very arrogant when he's at that place. But he's also, like, really conniving. Right? And he's kind of malicious. Like, he goes after Julian in there. It's not Norma, really. Because there's a great scene that we didn't mention where Norma takes over. And this is a super interesting scene. I'm not really sure what to make of it, but Norman goes to a strip club with Julian, and Julian goes over to, like, the VIP room, and Norman does as well, and this girl's, like, on his lap, and then we shift camera angles, and Norma takes over.
Yeah.
And it's not like she's like, you slut. At first, she's, like, into it.
Yeah.
And she's, like, kissing, like, rubbing on her and stuff.
Yeah.
Which I was like... But then she eventually does be like, telling... It's weird. It's because, like, Norma's into it, but Norma seems to be aware... It's weird, because Norman's not in the room, but she treats it like Norman is in the room, and is like, this isn't the kind of thing Norman would like. Right? But Norman's not there. So it's like she's kind of aware that she's Norman as well. Like, she's possessing Norman's body, which is super odd, because it's Norman thinking he's Norma, and Norma is aware that she's Norman. But Norman is not aware that he's Norma.
Yeah, I think also it has more to... Well, like, Norman sees his mom as, like, a sexual person. Like, and that's, like, one of the triggers that he has is, like, a jealousy factor.
We also get to see the genesis of the peephole and watching his mom have sex.
Right. So I think, and obviously that happens after he gets out, but, in the last season we got some, like, more sexualized versions of the Norma persona in him. Yeah. And so it's almost like Norma is allowed to be sexual, but Norman isn't.
So that's he's even aware of her hypocrisy.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, he calls her a hypocrite. And that's one, I mean, that's that whole, that whole sequence at the table with Norman and Romero and everything. But when he says that to her, I mean, he's 100% correct. Like, she has done nothing but keep him close to her and try and baby him and all this stuff, and then bring somebody else into it and is like, well, we're just going to share all the attention. And it's like, what do you expect? How do you expect him to react? Like, you can't do that to your child and then not want them to get, like, jealous when you're giving all that affection elsewhere. But, I did think that was really an interesting scene. And I also, I like, obviously, we didn't really talk about his therapy sessions, but when the doctor meets Norma and everything, and that's really fascinating because it's like he now he knows what's going on. And you
really think he'd sign off on him leaving after meeting this second persona, and Norman says that he thinks that his mom's a killer?
Well, right, I know. That's, like, what I was thinking, too. But it's, like, he hasn't had enough evidence that Norman is, like, violent, I guess. Like, and he needs... That's why when he asks Norma, like, has he ever been violent? Like, if she had just said yes, he would have not signed off on him leaving.
I just feel like with him being like, I think my mom's dangerous. Yeah. And then turns into his mom. Yeah. Bro.
Sure. I mean, that doesn't take too much to be like, oh, you mean like you as your mom are dangerous, not your actual mom. Right. Yeah. It sucks. He's mental health failure.
Yeah. So do you think that he blames himself then?
The doctor?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think that the doctor would,
But he thinks that Norma committed suicide.
Right.
And tried to kill Norman.
That's the thing.
So that would actually maybe reinforce in his mind, like, oh shit, Norman was right.
Yeah.
She's the killer.
Yeah.
But do you think we're going to see him again as his doctor?
I do. I think he might even come to the house to try and like make a house call, especially after finding out that Norma's dead. And I think Norman's going to, I don't know, I'm like I feel like he's going to be acting really normal at some point. Like he's going to be like super happy, which is going to set off like some alarm bells or some red flags because like his mom died, so he shouldn't be like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I do think we'll probably start. I mean, I don't know. I don't know where we're going to start. I don't know if we're going to start, like, literally right when we left off. You know, where he's still, like... But he's, where we leave off is, like, the delusion has taken full control. Like, Norma's alive, but he's going to obviously have to start doing stuff to her body because she's going to start decaying and smelling.
Right, because she wasn't
and showing signs. Yeah, which makes me kind of hopeful that there's going to be scenes where he's, like, talking to Norma and she looks fine, and then, like, something starts to, like, be really scary, and he's like, oh... Yeah, she wasn't embalmed specifically so that he could taxidermy her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's like, even though he thinks that's his plan, that she's alive and faking it, there's a part of him that's like, no, I want to taxidermy her. Like, I know she's dead.
I think, but there's like, it's almost like
he's psycho.
He's psycho, but I was going to say, like, I mean, the way he is with the dog... It almost is like he thinks that he can bring them back to life by taxidermying them. Like, you know, like that they're not really dead.
Right.
Like
that's a good point.
So I don't know that he, like, I don't think he's fully, I don't think he understands death.
So why is it, if that's the case, then why doesn't he have, like, a whole fucking zoo?
I know.
Running
because
around the
he
house?
only has I mean, you're right. That's a good point. But the only thing that he has an emotional connection with is the dog.
So he has to have an emotional connection with the thing he taxidermies, then he comes back from the dead?
I mean, but you're right. He should have a whole zoo.
Should have an owl and
which maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll see all those things come to life.
Yeah.
But.
And that's it. I think we covered all the major things, right? There's small things that we didn't talk about, but I don't think any of them are really that important. Unless I'm completely forgetting something, but pretty sure that's all the big stuff.
Yeah, I think so.
So that's that. One season left. So next week we will be covering season 5, the final season. And then the next week after that, we will cap this off with the Bates Motel made-for-TV movie from the 80s with Lori Petty.
Yeah.
Which I've never seen. So that'll be a completely new Psycho franchise installment for me. I've heard it's trash. So that might be really fun to discuss, just to bomb on it.
Yeah.
And this next one, we get to talk about some episodes I have not seen. Yeah. So I'm going to get some new Psycho stuff for me in the next 2 videos. So definitely look forward to that. And what did you think of this episode? This season as a whole?
It was wonderful.
This is for them.
Oh, yeah.
We got it. Yeah. But yeah. So this is like a top 10 show for you then?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, for sure.
Really into this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'd be curious on what a top 10 show list would be for you.
I don't know. I'd have to think about it. But this is definitely, like, really up there for sure. It's definitely one of my favorites that I've watched. So, yeah.
And last note here, if you haven't seen or if you're not planning on seeing Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, you should.
Yes.
Because it's wonderful.
It is.
We literally just saw it. And it's fantastic. So I just wanted to cap it off with that. I did cover like everything up to Endgame on the channel at one point, but I never felt like anybody cared, so I didn't keep with it. And there's been so many things since.
Yeah.
And like I feel like there are a couple people that are like, oh, I wish Jason would have kept with the MCUs, and I want to know what he thinks. I still like everything the MCU's ever put out. I still, to varying degrees.
Yeah.
Things I like more than others, for sure. But I still always enjoy every TV show and every movie has always been a winner for me. I have a good time when I watch them.
Yeah.
And that's that. Anyways. All right, guys. Until next week.